So we'll call this meeting to order. And Mr. McGinnis, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. First, on behalf of the board, I want to thank all of you for participating on this committee for this important process in our district. And I'd like just to review with you quickly the Sunshine Law and the Public Records Law as those will apply to your service on this board. Because the committee has been established and charged with the responsibility of making recommendations to the school board, the provisions of Florida's Sunshine Law, which is the open meeting law, and the Public Records Law apply to your actions as committee members and to the deliberations of this group. And in order to fully comply with that law, first we'll let you know we have properly advertised this meeting publicly, and this meeting today will be open to the press and public. There are portions of certain procurement meetings that can be closed to the public, but that would be at a later date. If you choose to have interviews or things like that, you can make that decision. Today's meeting, though, would remain fully open to the public. I would tell you that in accordance with the Public Records Law, as you do your scoring and you make any notes in that regard, those will all become part of the record of this procurement. And as you complete your job, we'll ask you to turn those in with your scoring sheets. So please keep that in mind as you're making notes and things of that nature. As part of the Sunshine Law, it's important to remember that you cannot discuss this matter with any of the other members of this committee outside of the properly noticed public meetings. And we would also ask you not to discuss with any representative of any firm that has proposed anything about their proposal or anything that they may want to talk about regarding this solicitation or procurement outside of the proper public meeting. The final thing I'd like to mention is that I know each of you already have been asked to review each of the responding firms to determine whether you had any conflicts of interest with them. I think you've probably already completed a conflict of interest affidavit, but I would like for the record today to confirm with each of you that you do not have any conflicts of interest with any of the proposers. So, Mr. Belcher, I would start with you. Have you identified any conflicts with any of the proposers?
No, sir, none.
Mr. Bennett?
No, sir.
Dr. Kelly?
None.
Mr. Horton?
No, sir.
And Ms. Perry?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Those are the opening comments I wanted to make.
Okay. And so I think, will we turn to Mr. Wyndham
Yes,
now for the process? Thank you.
Right, and so the first thing I'll do is, we received 7 proposals for this request for proposal, and we checked all these proposals in purchasing department for, to make sure they all met all the requirements, the minimum requirements for a responsive proposal, and all 7 did meet that requirement. And so with that being said, now you guys have had your initial review too, so we would need Jeff at this time to have a motion and then a vote to accept all 7 of the proposals as responsive.
That would be the first order of business based upon the purchasing department's report and recommendation. If the committee determines that all 7 responders are responsive to the RFP, that puts them all in play then for consideration.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Thank you, Mr. Belcher. I need a second.
A second.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. We need to vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So it carries 5-0.
So based
Thank
upon
you.
that action, now all 7 of the proposals are before you for consideration, for discussion, ultimately for scoring and ranking.
Okay. So do we need to just start with the first one and go down? Or?
Yeah, I think what you might want to consider is, in general, talking about the proposals that you've all had a chance to review, whether or not you believe that they provided you sufficient information to be able to score and evaluate the proposers based upon the matrix in the RFP, or if you believe that you need to conduct interviews of the proposers to provide further information. That's a decision that you need to make today as to whether you're going to be able to move forward today with ranking and scoring and selection, or do you believe you're going to need to reschedule a second meeting, which we have advertised, for the purpose of having interviews of those proposers. And that's totally a committee decision based upon the content of the proposals.
And is that something we need to decide at this moment right now?
Well, I think as part of your discussion about the proposals, you would decide, yes, did you have enough information to be able to rank and score them, or do you need other information?
From my perspective, there's enough information for me. Given that we're going to have committee discussion too, there'd be enough information to rank and score today. So,
I concur. I think so.
That's
Everybody?
yep.
Do we need a motion?
So
or
I
can we
think based
just-
upon that, then, the committee by motion could decide that you don't need to schedule interviews and that you would move forward today with scoring and ranking the firms.
All right, so I need a motion.
Move.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Horton. I need a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Looks like it
So now,
passed
Madam
unanimously.
Chairman, the proposals are here for full discussion by the board. You can determine how you want to do that. You can go piece by piece. You can ask questions of certain ones, however the committee wants to talk about it, but just so that you're all clear on what's in front of you. And then at some point, you can determine when you're ready to begin scoring and evaluating them. And at that time, we will actually take a recess if you need to finish scoring or change scoring, whatever you want to do following the discussion. Then we'll come back into the meeting and I'll go around the table and have you announce your scores, and Mr. Wyndham and I will help tabulate all of that today.
Okay. Would it be appropriate to have a Ford and Associates speak, not to their recommendation, but just give us some overview information
Right?
as our bond
And
counsel?
you might want to, for the record, introduce them as
Yes,
they're
sir.
here. Yeah.
So at this time, it's appropriate to introduce Mr. John Ford, and I believe it was Will Ford, here today from Ford and Associates.
And Jerry, can you hear us okay?
So we can't hear you at all.
Can't hear you at the moment.
Steve, I can hear you
There we
very
go.
clearly.
There we
Everybody
go.
else is very faint.
Okay, so we'll work on that.
No.
If it's appropriate, Dr. Kelly's asked maybe that you introduce yourselves and provide us some overview information from your perspective.
Sure, let me do that if I could. Thank you. Let me set a couple of parameters here. We are not the committee. We're here to assist the committee, and we are not kingmakers. So normally what we would do in this time frame is we would talk to you in general about the proposals without telling you what our personal rankings would be. We think it's important that before you write down on paper that y'all have a discussion about, your reactions to those individual proposals. At the end of that, if you would like to know what we think, we're happy to tell you that. But in general, this is more a qualitative process than it is a quantitative process. Having read the proposals, you will now understand that everybody is number one at something. There's everybody in there claims to be number one in some capacity. In the RFP, we asked specifically for experience starting from January 1, 2018 going forward. If that didn't get a particular firm to number one in the category they wanted to be listed number one, they added a year or 2 years or 5 years so that they could draw those rankings from industry data tables to allow them to say they're number one in some area. It is, in our estimation, the experience that is most important sort of falls down in a few areas. One is, do they have an experienced banking team? Those are the people that would work most directly with Mr. Horton and with Julie, and the three of us on the phone from Ford Associates. And so from our perspective, it's important that those individuals, particularly the lead individual and the next individual in line, have strong experience with Florida School District finance. The reason we believe that is because over the last several years, a number of the laws have changed around the state, particularly laws dealing with cost per student station and other aspects of Florida law as it impacts school district financing. And we think that it's better if everyone on the team comes to the table with a certain baseline of knowledge rather than depending upon us and the lawyers involved to teach them along the way. We'd rather you spend your money educating your kids than educating your bankers. So we feel that expertise with Florida School District financing is important. We believe that in addition to the banker, that the firm's overall experience having underwritten COPs, whether they happen to be for a school district or whether they happen to be elsewhere, and sales tax issues also is important. It helps that they were in Florida, because from state to state, COPs, certificates of participation, which is the type of security that's going out here, have differences in their legal structures, and those changes in structure make a difference to investors that are looking to buy them. So we want to make sure that the sales force that's going to be offering these bonds are aware of that, and we want to make sure that the underwriters will be actually pricing the bonds are aware of that. If you were able to catch Will's presentation a few weeks ago, you'll understand that the way that the underwriters split up their work is that those bankers are assigned to work with us up until the day of the pricing. On the day of the pricing, their underwriting desk, their underwriter that's assigned to this transaction, actually takes over responsibility for the transaction, and they negotiate with us the prices for each individual year that the bonds are being offered, a different price for every year. And they release those prices to their salespeople. Those salespeople contact investors and try to pull in orders. That person on the underwriting desk who is releasing those prices and negotiating with us on your behalf for those prices is critically important. At the end of the day, we can do everything we need to do. Their bankers can do everything they need to do. But if the underwriter is weak and their distribution platform is weak, your transaction will suffer in terms of its price. It may not be at a level that you would readily see. It may be a couple 1/100%, but when you're borrowing $100 million, that matters. Those are classrooms that don't get built. There's student stations that aren't financed appropriately, and so it's our job to try to help you find a team that combines not only excellent bankers, but a good distribution system, an excellent distribution system, and a top-notch underwriter. We refer to that person as the person holding the pencil. So, is there a difference in your mind if you're looking at something, if you're going to, let's say you're going to a surgeon to have a knee replacement? If somebody has done 5 of those operations over the last 5 years since 2018, as opposed to somebody that's done 1,000 of them since 2018, who are you going to be more comfortable with? But if there's somebody in there that's done 800, is he any less qualified than the person who's done 1,000? At some level, they're doing them frequently enough that they've cleared the bar. And so that base of experience sort of levels out, and you say, okay, they're all basically qualified to get us here. Then you take a look, if it's important to you locally, at what is the distribution system that they have in your area? Do they have offices in Okaloosa County? Does that matter to me as an official for Okaloosa County Schools or as a member of the selection committee? And if so, how do you evaluate that? You have 2 firms in there that have 19 and 20 brokers in the area. You have another firm that has $350,000 in deposits with the school district. Do those things matter to you? If local residents want to buy these bonds, which is going to be, as we set up the sale, it's going to be a priority. We will fill those orders first from any local residents to the extent that you have distribution in the county and those people have accounts with those firms that you've included in your transaction. It is easier for them to place orders for those bonds. That's not going to be a big driver on the cost of your transaction because the number of institutional orders is going to be small in relation to the whole. We then look at what were their write-ups like on the credit aspects that we asked them. Did they do a good job describing their understanding of your credit and where we think the rating agencies would be? We added a question about their activity bidding on competitively sold Florida School District paper, both tax anticipation notes, which we refer to as TANs, and other sales tax or COP issues. And let me just state for the record that tax anticipation notes have a final maturity of 1 year or less, so they're not comparable to the transaction that you're doing. But we do think that it's an indicator of their willingness to commit capital and their focus on Florida school districts. If somebody is constantly bidding on almost every competitively sold piece of paper that a school district offers, we think that that is a positive factor as opposed to someone who never bids on Florida paper. You know, are they investing in Florida school districts? So that is a broad background of what we take a look at. You've seen information in there that basically shows you how much capital these firms have, how much net equity capital they have. That directly relates to legally or regulatorily how big of a bond issue they would be able to underwrite. They would never underwrite one that large, but it says this is what we could do. So from a regulatory perspective, every one of the firms in here could underwrite this transaction by themselves. There would be huge differences, we believe, in the efficiency and the outcome of that transaction among those. So as we looked at these proposals, we saw two that we thought were head and shoulders above everybody else. We saw another group that was in the middle. We saw one or two that lagged behind that, and we saw one, as I mentioned to Steve earlier, that was poor enough to almost be considered non-responsive. And that is, you know, that is our general thoughts on the overall pool. One of the questions that we ask in the RFP is how many firms should be included here? And I think Will made the best comment after he read them, and that was each firm stated the team at a size that was to their personal greatest advantage, and that's not surprising. But the consensus we've sort of come to is that there should be 3 firms in the transaction. That we should have a senior manager for this initial transaction. You might rotate that later on a subsequent financing, but they should have 2 co-managers. The senior manager is the person who holds the pencil and actually does that negotiating with us. So in a nutshell, that's how we have viewed these things. We've spent a lot of time going through every proposal, making notes about various things that they wrote in given areas, especially on the credit side. And, you know, Will, I would ask you if you have anything to add, and then we would hand it back to you all.
Thank you, Jerry. I think you did a great job wrapping that up. I was going through trying to come up with something else to add to that, but I think you've got it pretty well covered there.
So are we now to discussion or
Yeah.
clarification questions to them first?
Certainly you can do that, and then move into your discussion.
Okay.
Could I ask a general question that applies to all the proposals? There was a scoring criteria for client references.
That was my
I
question too.
specifically didn't see anything that was responsive to that. Also didn't see where it was necessarily asked for. Was that something they had the opportunity to provide? Is there something that I missed, or is that kind of negative, kind of neutral for all of them is the way I looked at
And
it?
to that, I was wondering if the examples given were to be considered a client reference or how that was worked in there too. So thank you. That was my exact question, one of them.
Well,
Yes.
the
I
answer,
heard the question about client references. I didn't hear the other comment.
Okay.
Okay, I think Vince is gonna
Vince is
address it, but it was whether or not maybe some of the agreements that were included as appendices would represent client references, but Vince is gonna
we
speak to
can let
this.
him answer him. He wrote the RFP.
Oh, okay.
So we-
Okay.
so
Maybe you, Jerry.
Okay, I did not hear Vince's response.
He said maybe Jerry
said
could answer the
maybe
question.
He gave you the
can.
ball.
I can. There was not a specific reference. I'm looking here, Vince. There's not a specific reference in here that, a question that asks specifically for them to list client references. And so the idea here was that if you, let me just make sure that's the case, that if you had gone to, if you had chosen to go with interviews, at that point, we would reach back out, get the references, and contact them.
Yeah, the only place where references showed up was in the scoring piece. There wasn't a separate question going through and asking. But that is something that we did request that they provide sort of a list of firms that they're of issuers that they have worked with. So those would be the folks that were we to need to reach back out to, we could.
Okay, thank you. Chairman, can I ask one other question?
Sure.
The Bank of America proposal references a meeting with the board on October 4th, I believe. Is there material from that presentation that should be considered, and did the other responders have any similar input?
So Bank of America actually submitted an analysis on that date. They didn't meet with the board. They submitted what we refer to as an unsolicited analysis. Their timing was good because it came out just before the RFP. They were the only firm that submitted anything in advance. I'm pausing here a little bit because we have all been shocked for the last year because all of these guys are very good. They get newspaper feeds, they get announcement when somebody places an issue on a ballot, and usually we're just covered up with stuff. We would have normally gotten half a dozen to a dozen analyses between the time that you first started talking about going out for this referendum up until today. And for whatever reason, this just never crossed anybody's radar. It was really surprising. So we did have, is that Jamie? I'm sorry, I'm laughing. My assistant just heard me coughing, and one day she made a cup of tea for me, and she put some honey in it, but there's a bottle of honey out there that belongs to Will that is highly spiced. It's called Extra Hot. And she dumped that in that cup of tea, unbeknownst to her or me. So we did not get any unsolicited material from any of the underwriters with the exception of Bank of America, which did occur on October 24th. We have a copy of that if you'd like it. I believe Steve and Julie have a copy of that as well, and it was sent to the board. But we can grab that out and throw it up on the screen if you'd like.
So I did notice a discrepancy, really not a discrepancy, but a difference in the attorney fees across these from $15,000 to $25,000. Is that something we should consider, or just know that they vary? And is there a reason?
It is not, because there are two things going on here. One, they are, in one case, they're assuming, one of three things. One, they're assuming that their attorney will not provide a legal opinion about your disclosure, or saying you adequately disclose everything you're supposed to disclose, known as a 10b-5 opinion. There was one of the firms, maybe two of the firms at least, that said, you know, my $15,000 fee assumes that your guy is providing the 10b-5, right? No or not. The rest were silent on that, but at a higher fee. But if you notice, at least four of them, I believe, had quotes, included the same law firm with different prices.
Exactly.
The number that they gave you for a $75 million transaction is well below the rate that those lawyers, any of those firms, would charge. What's happened here is none of these underwriters have actually gone to those lawyers and gotten a quote from them. Okay? They've just thrown in a number. We tend to get a little bit annoyed at that, and at the end of the day, here's what will happen. They'll come to us and say, gee, you know, we were wrong here. The Underwriters Council fee needs to be 80% of bond counsel, and you know, we'd like you to pay for that, and we're going to say, we're going to give you the opportunity to pay for that difference out of your spread. This happens all the time, and it just annoys the tar out of us.
That's interesting.
particularly with one firm. With
The
one
same
in
firm.
particular. Well, you look like you've got something to say.
I do. One thing I do want to bring up is that there is a range from 15 to 25,000 in the responses that we received. The difference in quality of the underwriting will drastically outweigh the difference in cost in that underwriter's counsel fee. So that is not a number that should be driving the decision. Because
Just a
that's
curiosity.
it's something that's
Mhm.
going to be inside of the difference there is going to be worth well under a basis point.
So over the 9.5-year life of this transaction, say that fee doubled, say it was $50,000. That $25,000 difference over that 9.5-year, $100 million borrowing is out several
That's-
decimals.
Okay,
It's-
thank you. Thank you for that. Do have another question, and that is, in many of these, and as you clarified, thank you, that we would actually be looking for a senior manager and a couple of co-managers. So would it be then that our top 3 scorers would be in those positions?
That is certainly an excellent way to do that. That is certainly a good way to do that. In doing that, there may be another item. I'm trying to stay, Vince, slap me if I get off base here. In your scoring, we view, a couple of these firms as clearly, having the 2 best proposals. We view another group, two to 3 of them, 2 in particular, as sort of being the next group, and then trailing off after that. One of the things that you might consider is that because construction costs are going up, and because the use of sales tax dollars to pay this, it's just fine, it covers it just fine, but you're also going to need sales tax dollars available to you to help pay for your new schools to the extent that they exceed cost per student station. It's going to be important. It may be that at some point in time you want bank financing. So you might, if 2 firms are neck and neck, you might want to look at who would be most likely among those neck and neck firms to be able to provide bank financing should the district need it, as opposed to a publicly offered bond issue. But that would be a choice that you would make if you viewed firms comparably.
And so I have a couple of comments. So you said at the beginning of this was kind of a qualitative analysis and not so quantitative. So that's challenging when you kind of look at all the numbers here and you want to kind of come up with a 1, 2, 3, 4 based on what the numbers say. So we understand we're not there. For me, when I looked at these, I felt one stood out from a number of perspectives. So obviously, when I was looking at these, if I didn't see some Florida COP experience or even specifically school district COP experience, that kind of was a non-starter for me. The other thing that was important to me was that if I saw either maybe somebody, a senior manager that has some experience, but they're with a new firm, that at least caused me to think a little bit compared to someone who'd been with a firm for a while and with that firm had a lot of underwriting experience as a senior manager. There were some that were clearly co-managers on some issues and some things that didn't have a lot of senior manager experience. So, and then the other thing that I looked at was you mentioned the Okaloosa County residents and their ability to partake and to participate in this in some kind of an easy format. So, I looked to see if there was some real presence in Okaloosa County where people could go into a place, open an account, and purchase some of these certificates. So I'm interested to hear everybody's comments, but the one that kind of looked like it had a lot of Florida COP experience to me was the Raymond James proposal. And I know they're large, and I know they've got a presence in Okaloosa County, and there was a lot of Florida COP. So I'm not sure how they lined up in other people's, but if it's time to kind of talk about these now, I'm happy to to do that.
Yeah, I thought Raymond James Raymond James and Bank of America both
Me too.
had a lot of experience there. Because I noticed that some of them, they had some CLP experience, but it was older. You know, like 2014, 2017, the most recent, and so that, I wasn't sure about that. I would think you'd want something that they've still been in the game.
So, and then along with that, if we do have one that has a local presence, are we dealing with only the people listed? Or if we know of local people there, will they have a role as well?
That is a really good question. Thank you for that. I'm glad you asked that. The people that the district will be dealing with is the senior banker that is listed in that proposal,
Okay.
and the next banker or two down listed in that proposal.
Okay.
Okay, that's who we're going to be dealing with on an ongoing basis. When it comes time to price the bonds, starting a couple of weeks in advance of that, we're going to be having active discussions with the lead underwriters. So you mentioned Julie, B of A, and Raymond James. They both have virtually the same number of licensed security people in Okaloosa County. One has 19, one has 20. Raymond James gave you all of their offices. B of A did not tell you where their branches were and how many other employees they had in the county. You don't have that number. But what will happen is that they will all send out internal sales memos to their licensed representatives. They'll do work in advance, making sure that their local people, that those 19 or 20 representatives have information on the transaction that's coming. We will ask them to run a local ad in the paper, to do some advertising and mailers, letting them know that this transaction is coming. And so there will be the ability for people, if they don't have an account with one of the three firms that you assign to this, to call one of those firms and open an account for the purpose of placing an order for these bonds. So that would work pretty much the same way with either of the two firms that you mentioned. But no, you would not be working directly with any of their local employees. They would have no role other than as a salesperson to investors locally.
Good to know. Thank you. Any other major discussion? Do we need now to go down to looking at these descriptors here on the score sheet and talking about those in depth, or come to some agreement on the
Steve, would you
scores?
like me to just put up a little recap of those numbers on the screen for you?
That would be great.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Anything you can do to help us.
Anything, yes.
Everything you can do to help us.
You need to enable screen sharing then.
Paul.
Paul McNeely could do that, I think. Here he comes.
All eyes are on you, Paul.
I'm happy to help if you need it.
Pardon my face.
Is it the green one?
There we go. So, can you see this?
We can.
Okay. So in here, this simply, shows their assets. As you can see, B of A is the gorilla in there, but B of A, PNC, RBC, RJ, UBS all have significant size in terms of their total assets. Public finance departments are good size for all of them, clearly. RJ, and B of A are the largest, but that is nationwide, okay? In terms of their net capital available, ranges from over 12, well, actually it ranges from over 12 billion down to $7 million with Estrada Hinojosa. Public finance bankers in Florida, you've got 5 with B of A. You've got 16 with Raymond James. I'm trying to think of who those people are, because I know almost all of them. I can't come up with that number, but maybe. And then offices in Okaloosa, B of A has listed 3. I don't know if that is their total branch offices or if that is just their brokerage offices. They have 19 brokers as compared to the 20 brokers at Raymond James. Cop experience. This is one where in the cover letters and other places, people sort of played fast and loose with what they had. In point of fact, if you go from the time frame that we requested in the proposals, this is how it breaks out. You know, B of A did 11 issues as a senior manager, worth $926 million. RJ did 13 at $777 million during that time period. We would view them, both can claim to be number 1 depending upon whether you're going by par amount or number of issues. Usually the industry ranks by par amount, so I would view those absolutely comparably. Their number of issues as co, again, are comparable. B of A virtually bids on almost everything that comes up at competitive sale. Raymond James does a good job there as well. I think this is PNC. They and RBC both do a good job on that, as does UBS down here. So how many people did they recommend you put in the deal? B of A says, hey, I'll do it all, but give me 1. PNC, 3 or 4. 4 is just too many. RBC, again, wanted 3, a size of 3. Raymond James was 2 or 3. Siebert wanted 5 firms in the transaction, 4 to 5 firms in the transaction. UBS was 3. So the consensus was sort of 3, which is what we were looking at prior to looking at any of the proposals. That was sort of our number was in there. So that is, that's just a recap of the quantitative factors. B of A, RJ, RBC, PNC, and UBS all had solid credit write-ups. Of those, well, we may have some differences here. I thought B of A, RJ's were the 2 top write-ups. I thought PNC ran a close second to them, as did RBC.
Yeah, I think they all did it well. I think those firms did probably the best job going through writing up. There are some little differences in how some of the numbers are calculated. So you'll notice there, particularly with Moody's, that there will be a difference in opinion of where the rating for this issue would fall. A lot of that is based on what how they're calculating some of the metrics that Moody's goes through and uses. So that it's not worth going through dinging them on whether they think you're going to come in at a AA3 or a AA2. They all put some thought into it and did their homework into the district.
And you would probably add, Jerry, that the comments from all these firms, while were accurate, but also very positive toward the district's current financial position.
Absolutely, they were. And sometime, if you would like, after this meeting, we'll talk to you specifically about the credit rating agency scorecards and where you're really strong and where you're not quite as strong. But overall, you're really solid in all of their criteria.
Okay, do our experienced banker people want to make comments?
My scoring just internally, just my off the cuff is pretty much in line with that.
Bob?
Yeah, no, I had, as was previously stated, B of A and Raymond James significantly above the others. Then the other three well capitalized. It was hard to distinguish for me, and then the two smaller firms were lagging well behind. But it's just kind
Yeah, exactly.
of quantitatively the way I saw it.
Jerry, so that you may not have heard that, but some of what I'm hearing right now is Bank of America and Raymond James kind of stood out, both large and capable. So in this situation, you know, in ranking these, one of them as a senior and another as a co, I'm assuming they both would take on the role as co if asked to do so. And is there an opportunity for any thought from your perspective of just feedback on those two firms?
Sure. First of all, you're going to have more than one transaction. And so you have the ability to do what we call rotating votes. And if you feel that they're that close, put one of them in the lead on this transaction and then allow it to rotate at your discretion after that. So you're not locking yourself in to a senior manager permanently for the life of this engagement. Okay? So anything you would do in the next 5 years, you have the ability to choose any one of those three firms to be your lead. So if your plan is right now, you know, it's one of those two as the senior, then on your next transaction, you can elevate the other one, and the one that had been senior on this transaction will drop down to a co-manager. That is frequently done. It's a good way to approach it. It keeps people interested in following you and providing information to you if they know they've got a shot to ascend. So, you know, that is a solid way to go. In terms of, you know, this particular transaction, I think, you know, the one thing we haven't talked about is distribution. Both have solid distribution systems. There may be somewhat of a difference in the strength of their underwriting desk. There are times that Bank of America simply has the ability to be more aggressive. They're both excellent underwriters. We work with both of them a lot. I would say on any given day, if B of A decides that it wants to do something, it has the ability to do that. Sometimes they do it because they believe it's the right thing. Sometimes they do it because they're trying to line themselves up for another transaction. Sometimes they may do it to make somebody else look bad. But nonetheless, in all those situations, their clients benefit from that. So, you know, they have a big hammer that they can use when they choose to use it. Raymond James is very consistent. They do a very good job. You know, they're both highly qualified.
Could I ask a question to the Fords? From our last bond experience, is there any firm in this group that should be considered a little more highly because of what went on before, or low or less highly, or is there any?
Your last experience?
Yes.
I believe your last experience included A.G. Edwards, which is no longer in existence. And I believe that it included Citigroup. If you could look that up, Will, can you pull up one of the last OSs? I'm trying to think, it's been so long ago.
Yeah, it's probably not relevant. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't something that they did extraordinarily well or poorly. Yeah. So it's fine. I just wanted to know if there was something that came to mind right away.
Now, we have not had a bad experience with any of those firms that have strong Florida COP, capabilities. And I want to make some disclosures here. I've done this with Steve, but we know them all. I mean,
Sure.
Rick lives down the street. Rick Patterson and Raymond James lives down the street from me. We're not social friends, but our motto, by the way, is to be friendly with everyone and friends with no one. So we don't allow underwriters to take us to lunch. We always pay our own way. We spend a lot of money every year on meals that we'd rather not go to, simply because we don't feel that we can say no. But the head of B of A, their number 2 guy corporately that covers all of public finance in the U.S. is a friend of mine. We served on the municipal securities rulemaking board together. John Ford used to work for the person who now runs public finance at UBS at the start of his career. So we know all of these people and know them well. And you know, there are no losers among those firms, those 4 or 5 firms who have significant COP experience in Florida.
Julie, was there
Yeah,
anything
Jerry,
from
to
your
reiterate
side?
one of the items that you brought up earlier, as far as external factors that could factor into an evaluation, most of these firms going through, particularly in this current low rate environment, view relationships holistically. So oftentimes their willingness to go through and extend a bank loan, should that be something that you need, extend their balance sheet, is something that oftentimes can be hard for their bankers to get past their credit committees without some other relationship, whether that's banking services or a P card or a chance at underwriting. So to the extent that 2 firms are comparably qualified, a firm that has a bank and uses that to extend their balance sheet to school districts gives you the possibility of accessing their balance sheet. It gives you a stronger possibility of accessing their balance sheet going forward. So those are firms like Bank of America, PNC, which just bought, they've been active in that space. They just bought BBVA Compass. RBC has a captive bank as well that they go through and use. RJ, to some extent, will go through and use theirs. But predominantly those are the folks that play in that space.
Julie, did you have a concern or comment about any of these that you and
No.
Ms. Rita might have experienced?
This is my first time I'm
Okay.
actually doing this, but no, I think that everything is making sense, and I'm agreeing with those, the tops.
So now, is it appropriate for us to go back to these score sheets, or do we need to have additional discussion? Does anybody have a comment or concern that we need to talk over? We all are in agreement with, obviously, those top 2. But do we need to now rank those 2 and then go to the third?
Well, I think what we need to do is obviously individually, you each have to score them. The ranking will come out of that.
Okay.
And the
So
scoring
what-
is completely arbitrary. There's no criterion like if they're at this level, it's one more point. If it's this, one more thing. We're assessing them based on our own internal
Individually,
criteria,
you're-
capped at
And is
those
there-
numbers.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
you're
is there
assessing them.
anything that we will substitute now for those client references, or just leave that off and
And-
say the
and
top will be 90?
I think if the committee would consider, in discussions with Mr. Wyndham, that there really is not a standard for you to rate number 4. And so if the committee is comfortable, we might just suggest that you just delete that category and not score anybody in that number 4 category.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
So 90 would be top.
And so my 20 could be Bob's 30, but in the end, when they're all tabulated,
Yeah, you're
So-
ranking them relative to your own.
yeah,
Yeah.
it would
So
so
what-
as
what
long as
you'll-
I'm consistent.
Right, what you'll be doing is, we're going to ask you to give them all a raw score in each of the 3 categories now. And when you announce those, whoever has the most points from you added together, we will assign a ranking
Yeah. okay.
point to that.
Makes sense.
And so that's how we'll come up for each one of you. The top 3 firms will be based upon the raw scores you give them in the thing. We'll go back and see then who your top point, scoring person was, and then they will get ranking points from there.
Okay.
So at the end of the process, we will come out with 3 firms for each of you ranked in order,
But
based
no-
upon your individual scores.
No need to go all the way through 7, just our top 3.
And Madam Chair, can I
to score
be,
them all.
We have to score
excused
all.
to take a quick comfort break?
Yes, please.
We have
All
to
right.
score all of them.
Well,
Yeah,
you
you
need
need
to
to
score
get-
them all. You need to
Yeah,
score
and then they'll
every
come out
firm.
the way they come out. You'll come out with
Okay.
the top 3. That's
All
what you
right.
score.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if you're gonna, if you're ready to go to
Do
the
we-
scoring, you may want to just recess the meeting and let the scoring go on, and then we'll reconvene when everyone's ready to announce those scores.
A great plan, thank you. So we recess at this time. Thank you. believe everyone has tabulated, so do we pass those to you, Mr. McGinnis?
No, we're going to actually have you announce those publicly here, so I'll just
Okay.
start with one of you, and I'm going to call out the name of each proposal, and for each one, if you please give me each of your 3 scores and then your total score for that firm. And then when we get all of your scores total, we'll go back and confirm how the ranking points are assigned to your responders, okay?
Okay.
So Dr. Kelly, we'll start with you, and I would ask you first for RBC Capital Markets, LLC, what was your score for financial stability, strength, and distribution capability?
So I had 35 on that,
Okay. Technical credit analysis,
29,
qualifications and experience,
24,
and then we're not ranking the references, so your total score for that firm?
88,
88. All right, for Seibert Williams and Shank and Company, financial stability, strength, and distribution capability,
20,
technical credit analysis,
20,
qualifications and experience,
25,
your total for that firm,
65,
65. B of A Securities, Inc., financial stability, strength, and distribution capabilities,
35,
technical credit analysis,
30,
qualifications and experience,
25,
25.
25,
Okay, and your total for that firm,
90,
90. Estrada, Enosa and Company, financial stability, strength, and distribution capabilities,
15,
15. Technical credit analysis,
15,
qualifications and experience,
15,
your total for that firm,
45,
45. UBS Financial Services, Inc., financial stability, strength, and distribution capabilities,
25,
technical credit analysis,
29,
29.
29,
Qualifications and experience,
25,
and your total for that firm,
79,
79.
correct.
Raymond James and Associates, financial stability, strength, and distribution capabilities,
35,
technical credit analysis,
30,
qualifications and experience,
24,
your total for that firm,
89,
89. PNC Capital Markets LLC, financial stability, strength, and distribution capabilities,
35,
technical credit analysis,
28,
qualifications and experience,
25,
your total for that firm,
88,
okay, so in looking at there for your ranking points assignments, appears that B of A Securities, Inc. would get 3 ranking points, is that correct?
yes.
Okay. And that Raymond James Associates would get 2 ranking points?
Okay, so 2, do I need to be,
I'm just confirming that would be,
okay, 3 and 2, gotcha.
okay. And then you have both RBC Capital Markets and PNC Capital Markets at 88 each, so they each would get 1 ranking point. Correct, Mr. Wyndham?
Right, that's correct.
Okay, Ms. Perry, we'll move to you. For RBC Capital Markets LLC, financial stability, strength, and distribution capabilities,
25,
technical credit analysis,
30,
qualification and experience,
15,
your total for that firm,
70,
70. Seibert Williams Shank and Company, financial stability, strength, and distribution capabilities,
20,
technical credit analysis,
20,
qualifications and experience,
0,
0.
for 40.
40 for that firm, total. B of A Securities, Inc., financial stability, strength, and distribution,
35,
technical credit analysis,
30,
qualifications and experience,
25,
Your total for that firm?
90.
90?
Mm-hmm.
Estrada Hinosa and Company, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution.
10,
Technical Credit Analysis,
20,
Qualifications and Experience.
0,
Your total for that firm.
30,
UBS Financial Services, Inc., Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution.
25,
Technical Credit Analysis,
30,
Qualifications and Experience.
5,
Your total.
60,
60. Raymond James Associates, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution.
33,
33.
mm-hmm,
Technical Credit Analysis,
30,
Qualifications and Experience.
23,
Total.
86,
86. PNC Capital Markets LLC, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution.
30,
Technical Credit Analysis,
30,
Qualifications and Experience.
15,
Your total.
75.
Okay, based upon those totals, then you would be assigning 3 ranking points to B of A Securities,
Mhm.
2 ranking points to Raymond James Associates,
Mhm.
and 1 ranking point to PNC Capital Markets.
Mhm.
Okay. Mr. Horton, we'll go to you next.
Yes, sir.
RBC Capital Markets LLC, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution.
30,
Technical Credit Analysis,
25,
Qualifications and Experience.
20,
Your total for that firm.
75,
Cybert Williams Shank and Company, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution.
25,
Technical Credit Analysis.
10,
Qualification and Experience.
10,
Your total for that firm.
45,
B of A Securities, Inc., Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution.
35,
Technical Credit Analysis.
30,
Qualifications and Experience.
25,
Your total for that firm.
90,
Estrada Hinosa and Company, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution.
20,
Technical Credit Analysis.
20,
Qualification and Experience.
5,
Your total for that firm.
45,
UBS Financial Services, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution.
30,
Technical Credit Analysis.
20,
Qualifications and Experience.
20,
Your total.
70,
Raymond James Associates, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution.
35,
Technical Credit Analysis.
25,
Qualifications and Experience.
25,
Your total.
85,
PNC Capital Markets LLC, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution.
30,
Technical Credit Analysis.
20,
Qualifications and Experience.
15,
Your total.
65.
Based upon your totals, then you would be assigning 3 ranking points to B of A Securities.
Yes,
You would be assigning 2 ranking points to Raymond James Associates.
yes,
And you'd be assigning 1 ranking point to RBC Capital Markets.
yes.
Okay. Mr. Belcher? RBC Capital Markets LLC, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution.
30,
Technical Credit Analysis.
28,
Qualification and Experience.
20,
Your total for that firm.
78,
Cybert Williams Shank and Company, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution.
26,
Technical Credit Analysis.
27.
27.
Yes, sir, 27.
Qualification and Experience.
20,
Your total for them.
73,
B of A Securities, Inc., Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution.
A 30,
Technical Credit Analysis,
28,
Qualifications and Experience.
a 20,
Your total.
78.
Estrada Hinosa and Company, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution.
22,
Technical Credit Analysis,
26,
Qualifications and Experience.
15,
Your total.
63.
UBS Financial Services, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution.
28,
Technical Credit Analysis,
25,
Qualifications and Experience.
19,
And your total.
72.
Raymond James Associates, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution.
32,
Technical Credit Analysis,
28,
Qualifications and Experience.
23,
Your total.
83.
PNC Capital Markets, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution.
28,
Technical Credit Analysis,
26,
Qualifications and Experience.
19,
Your total.
73.
Okay, based upon these numbers, it would appear that you would be assigning 3 ranking points to Raymond James, 2 ranking points to both RBC Capital Markets and B of A,
Yes, sir. That is correct.
and 1 ranking point to both Cybert Williams and PNC Capital
PNC.
Markets.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Bennett, RBC Capital Markets LLC, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution,
30,
Technical Credit Analysis,
25,
Qualifications and Experience,
15,
and your total.
70.
70.
Yes, sir.
Cybert Williams Shank and Company, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution,
15,
Technical Credit Analysis,
25,
Qualifications and Experience,
10,
your total.
50,
B of A Securities, Inc., Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution,
35,
Technical Credit Analysis,
25,
Qualifications and Experience,
25,
your total.
85,
Estrada Hinosa and Company, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution,
10,
Technical Credit Analysis,
25,
Qualifications and Experience,
10,
your total.
45,
UBS Financial Services, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution,
25,
Technical Credit Analysis,
25,
Qualifications and Experience,
15,
your total.
65,
Raymond James Associates, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution,
30,
Technical Credit Analysis,
25,
Qualifications and Experience,
20,
your total.
75,
PNC Capital Markets, Financial Stability, Strength, and Distribution,
25,
Technical Credit Analysis,
25,
Qualifications and Experience,
15,
your total.
65,
Okay, based upon your total scores, then you would be assigning 3 ranking points to B of A Securities.
yes,
You would be assigning 2 ranking points to Raymond James Associates,
yes, sir.
and you'd be assigning 1 ranking point to RBC Capital Markets.
Correct.
Okay. Madam Chair, if you give us just a minute, we need to tabulate now the ranking points.
Or do you do the Jeopardy music?
Oh, that would be good, wouldn't it?
Whistle it.
Put it up on your phone.
Mhm. Would that be Greg Ken Band Jeopardy, or would that be the game show Jeopardy?
You gotta go back, Steve, to get Greg Ken Band.
I was thinking Weird Al. Oh, that's on
Yeah,
Jeopardy.
yeah, right?
Hey, Steve, what was Greg Ken Band's other big hit?
They were not a one-hit wonder?
They were not, and another big hit.
Oh,
That'd take-
he's
that
got
would
it,
take- That
Paul's
would take
got
some
it.
thinking.
What was the question?
He mentioned the Greg Ken Band, and you did the Our Loves in Jeopardy song,
Yeah, yeah.
but there's
What was the
another.
other hit that they had?
It was the breakup song.
Okay. Yeah, 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 yeah.
They don't ride 'em like that anymore. See,
When I was in high school and we did the grad night at Disney World, they had performers there. So we were the year that Tommy Two-Tone was there.
Oh, I like this in Tony Tito.
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about, Bob?
Oh, yeah.
Mine was Casey and the Sunshine
Mine
Band.
too.
That-
Julie.
that-
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a
Really
step up
do.
there.
That's good.
So we were
What
doing
year
the
did you graduate?
75.
Okay, I was 77.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so they did it 2 times.
I guess so.
That's funny.
Mhm, it is.
They were definitely a one-hit wonder, though.
Yeah.
Tommy. It was a good band, but they never got credit for anything but that one song.
The little known fact on me is I got roped into owning a karaoke business back in the late 80s,
Get out of town.
early 90s. So we back when they had the 60 CD changers, so
Sure.
we'd stack 3 of them up and have 180 CDs with, 2,000 songs. And then it all went computer-based, and that was the end of that. I got out of it just at the right time.
So I hate to admit, I still know where an E-track player is.
I have some 8-track tapes in the garage.
My dad gave me his old F-150. I call it my farm truck, and I use it for all kind of tasks. And it had a cassette player in it, and he had 2 cassettes in it. Alabama's first album
Mhm.
and the soundtrack to Saturday Night Fever. So,
Wow.
Very nice.
yeah, on cassette. So. They didn't play very well, I'll just tell you that much, Bob.
Understood. Did you get the same one? Yeah, 5, 1, 15, 11.
I had a Jimmy Walker Dynamite 8-track player when I was a kid. Remember Kid Dynamite? And it had a plunger, and mine was yellow. And I remember that. I used to get so mad because I had 3 Dog Night's Greatest Hits, and it would fade out in the middle of Joy to the World. It clicked tracks together. And they go,
Oh, right.
oh, the boys and girls, I'd be so mad I wanted to do that.
Here,
I still remember that to this day. Joy to the fishes and the deep blue sea.
That was that one means of listening to music that you literally were stuck. You could hear 4 songs, but you couldn't go to what you wanted to hear. You could fast forward on a cassette, but the 8-track.
It was tough. How many kids you know have
Ready?
Jethro Tull? Sorry, Diane.
It's okay.
3 Dog Night, Jethro Tull, and B.J. Thomas 8-tracks to listen to as a kid. That's a pretty good combination.
Good memories.
So, Madam Chairman and committee, in totaling the ranking points, based on your scores, you have ranked Bank of America Securities, Inc. as number 1, Raymond James Associates as number 2, and RBC Capital Markets as number 3.
So good.
And so the first thing we would do is ask the committee if you agree with those rankings, then we would need a motion to approve those firms in that ranked order. Then we can deal with the recommendations of Mr. Ford dealing with assigning one of them to be the senior manager for this upcoming issue, and the other two to be co-managers for the issue, and then allowing the board to reserve the authority to rotate the senior manager position for future financial issues.
Okay, so at this point, I need to entertain a motion to that effect.
I'd make a motion that we approve those three as ranked as 1, 2, and 3.
Thank you. I need a second.
Second?
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
So unanimous.
And now to be certain that we're using the right words, and we've actually looked at language from a prior selection committee when there was this rotating done. And Mr. Ford, I would ask that you confirm this wording is what you were recommending. It would say the committee recommendation is to designate the top-ranked firm, Bank of America Securities Inc., as the lead senior manager for the 2022 COP issue, and the second-ranked firm, Raymond James and Associates, and the third-ranked firm, RBC Capital Markets LLC, as rotating co-senior managers. And for future financing transactions, it's recommended that the board reserve the right to rotate the senior manager position among those firms.
Okay, we would word it a little differently.
Okay?
It would be the senior manager, not the lead senior manager. In market parlance, that's one and the same. And then on the two other managers, they would be co-managers, not co-senior managers.
Okay. So I'll repeat that, Madam Chairman, and then the committee can consider that as another recommendation to the board if you want to do that. So the committee recommendation would be to designate the top-ranked firm, Bank of America Securities Inc., as the senior manager for the 2022 COP issue, and the second-ranked firm, Raymond James and Associates, and the third-ranked firm, RBC Capital Markets LLC, as rotating co-managers. For future financing transactions,
We would do rotating. I don't think you put rotating there. You don't put rotating that in that sentence, right?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
We do not.
They are
As
co-managers.
all right. And then for future financing transactions, recommend that the board reserves the right to rotate the senior manager position among these firms.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. So I need a motion.
I'd make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Need a second?
One point I
second.
would like to bring up, you are going through looking at this conceptually for this first transaction. It is possible that at some point going through here that you may elect to, you may want to reserve the right to change that grouping for the next, or for a subsequent transaction. In the event that you may have, it sounded as though the motion was going through and setting the team for this and subsequent transactions.
It allows it to rotate.
The question is, do you have the ability to add another firm based on, to a transaction that occurs within the time period?
They've not ranked another firm to be included on the team.
I think what
Just
Will's-
these three.
Will, am I incorrect? What you're saying is, let's say in year 3, we decide to scrap this and add another member or delete one of the members. Should we or should we not do that? Are you saying that, Will?
Well, the question is, for a subsequent transaction, do you have the ability to add a member to the underwriting team that is not in this piece, that is not contemplated in this motion?
Well,
Should we?
among these proposers, they have only ranked 3 firms, and that would be the team going forward. Now, at any time, the school board can choose to reevaluate, reissue another RFP, and go back out for team members.
Okay.
The fact is that right now, this motion, if the school board accepted it, they would be setting the three-manager team for the 2022 COP, and they'd be reserving the right to rotate among those three for another issue. However, if for some reason that team was not acceptable to the board in the future, they could simply go out for another RFP and review other firms.
I think that works just fine, Jeff.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so I think we had a motion by Mr. Bennett and a second
And
by
I did
Julie.
second. Mhm.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously.
And what I would ask committee members, if you'd be sure you have signed the bottom section of all of your evaluation pages and just pass those down this way. Mr. Wyndham will be maintaining those as part of his procurement file. If you have other notes that go with them, please pass those down as well. And if you have notes, at least put your initials or something on those pages so they could be identified as to who they belong to.
If it's just scratched, does that need to go
Okay, to
as
leave them in the
well?
box, Vince, and
Yes,
just leave
you
the box.
can leave your boxes there. I'll take care of that.
Right now, do you
So
want, you
we'll
just
have
want
a
the
couple
score
items
sheet?
we wanted to
Score
make
sheets and
sure
any
that you
notes
were
you made.
aware of.
Yeah, I've got it all, but-
That's okay.
So I just wanted to make
Scratch
sure I
around and
mentioned,
see.
we had been talking about Underwriters Council earlier. There is going to be a single Underwriters Council for this issue that will serve to cover all of the underwriters that are involved. You're not going to have those additional Underwriter Council fees for each of the underwriters that are included in the transaction.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
just,
their sound is off, Will.
We heard him.
We heard.
We got him.
We heard him.
is that all? We got it all? Okay.
Right, so this,
And if you'll wait just a second, because we're going to need you to sign the sheet, but I'm trying to get the motion written on here for you.
are we, so wait to adjourn?
Yes, ma'am, if you would, just a
Do it.
moment.
While we're waiting, I'd like to thank Mr. Wyndham and the Fords and Mr. Reed for their assistance today. Thank you, and thank you, Jason and Bob, for coming.
Very glad to.
Yes, we really appreciate your time.
Mhm. And of course, I appreciate you too, every day.
I can't remember the last time I used a pencil.
I had a mechanical one last night making some notes, only because Bill uses one that's on the table.
I haven't written with a pencil in so long.
I know, I was breaking the little tip off all the time. And it worked.
Mr. Horton, I did not use this when I was in school at Charlotte.
Special pencil.
One of my daughters may have, but I didn't.
That's probably your prime pencil fighting pencil back in the day.
I remember having my second grade teacher had a school store in the classroom. If you were good all week, you got points. Well, Mr. Jason didn't get you many points.
Oh, no.
One time she stocked it with those great big fat pencils with those big erasers, and they had, like this one was for the state of Alabama or something on there. So I was on my best behavior for a month, so I could get enough points to pick that pencil. I wanted that pencil. Then I used it to whoop everybody in the classroom, and I didn't get any more good points for about 2 months.
Uh-oh, it was your weapon.
There was always 4 or 5 girls that never did anything wrong, and they got all the
Uh-huh.
good, now I got all the good prizes.
That's a likely story.
It's
Amy Dent told me
true.
that
Oh, my
Amy Dent
word.
told me that the,
Shell
grant
Andrews,
application
I'll never forget,
was
her
pulled
dad
down
was a
from the sheriff
Methodist
file, so
minister,
they
and,
pulled it to look at it.
that girl,
She was concerned that.
she never
they
did
wouldn't
anything
even
wrong.
look
She
at it.
never did anything wrong. Never got in
Looking
trouble.
at it
She'd
now.
go through that store,
I
it
was
looked like
like,
she'd been to Sam's
If they get to
Club.
that, move quickly on it.
Bob, Jason, my grandfather was a Baptist minister, and I got that all the time. Miss Goody Goody,
So
your
like,
Miss Goody Two
all we
Shoes.
asked for
you know.
like FT and.
It's funny how that is.
retention,
It's
not
either,
bonuses.
it's
Another
it's
part of what
usually,
we asked for.
they're
When did they
extremely
come to
great,
us if they
well-behaved,
approved
couldn't be
yes or-
just the best citizens ever,
Basically, as we spent
or
it, we
you won't let your
pulled- we
kids hang out with them at all.
reimbursed
There's almost no in between.
And my sister and I were just
Now,
like that. We were total
I
opposites.
know
She
Jason was
rebelled,
working, I
or
think
ten,
he
she got, my
finished
dad
working
would sit
on
behind
the
at 11.
SR2
She was
budget
gonna be home
amendment
at
for
midnight
trial
or
too.
bust it,
Okay.
you know.
I'm meeting with April and.
She got my parents
And
great
get rid of
early.
this.
Yeah, I worked with her on the spreadsheet to try to equal it
I
out
wish
and
it would go
everything.
away.
Huh?
You get electrolyte water.
And then I sent
Oh,
him some spreadsheets
that's
so he would
actually
know
from
what
Whole
to
Foods.
use.
Okay, Madam Chairman,
Okay.
this is ready to be signed, so you can adjourn the meeting. I just needed you to sign
Thank
and
you
date
so
this
much.
before you leave the building.
Thank you. Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Jerry and Will and John.
Thank you, Jerry. Will, John.
I didn't.
There's no gavel. Where is it?
Calendar. I didn't get the calendar.